I may not be an OG player, but I'm a big fan of Monster Hunter World. Somehow ordering meals from feline chefs and then beating up big dinos with an oversized double-bladed glaive just never gets old. Monster Hunter isn't exactly a perfect game to adapt to the screen, but I feel like it'd be pretty easy to make a goofy, generic cult classic out of it. Think about it, you just plop a few researchers and hunters into a base, and then it happened that some big dino is rampaging and damaging the ecosystem, so they have to go out and kill the big dino. But it turns out there's an even bigger dino that's been agitating all the other big dinos, so they gotta kill the bigger dino to stop all the smaller big dinos from panicking and wreaking havoc on the land. That'd be a very simple story that's in line with the games. Pack it full of coy references and pretty visuals, and some of us will probably really enjoy it. I think there's a lot of generic monster movie stuff that you could do with the backdrop of Monster Hunter. But making an actually good adaptation that stays true to the series while telling a compelling movie narrative would be pretty impressive. It would also be pretty impressive to make a bad Monster Hunter movie. It's literally a series called Monster Hunter, where you beat up big dinos with big weapons for often flimsy reasons. But if there's one man who will impress us all with his video game adaptations, it's Paul W.S. Anderson, known for his 5 Resident Evil movies, none of which have even approached a 7 on IMDb, with the weakest of the bunch sitting in the low 5s. He's also done the critically acclaimed Alien vs. Predator, as well as a bunch of other films that have never managed to reach the oh-so-average 7. So it's not hard to believe this man could screw up Monster Hunter. So we start off with a quote from Albert Einstein that has literally nothing to do with the movie, apart from the fact that it says New World at one point. Get it? Because, in Monster Hunter World, they sail to the New World, so, this is a reference to that, because, it says New World. Isn't that just, really, really clever? Anyway, we get this cool visual of a ship sailing across the sea. Wait, no. Not the sea, the sand. Yes, a naval ship is sailing across the desert. Oh yeah, so in the trailer for the next Monster Hunter game, they made sand sailing canon. Yay, I love that. Anyway, back to the video. Why? Well, a Diablos, which for those who don't know are desert-dwelling dinos, needs to attack the ship. Why must a desert dino attack a sailing ship? I don't know. Probably because it's a cool visual. And the best way Paul could think of to pull off this visual is to have a seaborne vessel sailing across the sand? But it's not all doom and gloom. The CGI on the Diablos is actually pretty cool. The visuals are generally solid, and we'll talk more about that later. I do also like the decision to have the Diablos as the main monster, as it's a frickin' sick design, with its massive twisting horns on its head, its battle axe of a tail, and the thick armored scales covering its body. I also died to Diablos dozens of times, so it kinda hits close to home. The Diablos obliterates the ship, inhabited by honestly very recognizable world characters. Props to the costume designers. Unfortunately, a ship sailing across the sand is far from the most ridiculous thing this film has to offer. As we now cut to our world, and we see a convoy of military vehicles, and then this magic storm hits the convoy, and the Marines get transported to the Monster Hunter world? What the? Huh? One of these Marines is our main character, or rather, main plot device, as people in this movie don't really act like people. She's also the same actress who was in the 5 Resident Evil movies, because she's the director's wife. Of course the Diablos attacks the Marines, what else could possibly happen? And continuing with the ridiculous, the modern day weapons do literally nothing to the Diablos. They don't even slow it down, they don't even damage the scales, They just unexist when they hit the monster. The monsters in the game are tough, but not that tough. Paul actually explained his rationale for this utterly baffling decision. There's two parts to his reasoning. First one goes something like, playing Monster Hunter is like being a modern person yeeted into this fantasy world. Essentially, you're a stranger in the world, and I wanted to recreate that sense of wonder. I'm sorry, Paul, but this crap ain't Tron. The concept of being teleported into another world needs to be handled like a bomb. You can't just make anything an isekai because, I don't know, sense of wonder or something. This reasoning is delusional. There's many different ways you can create a sense of wonder in film, and it certainly doesn't require transporting people across dimensions. I mean, there's literally wonder in Monster Hunter World, as the Research Commission discovers new and amazing things about the new world, most of it manifesting in the excitement of the handler character. You can have a sense of wonder by the characters naturally discovering something new in the world. But if the characters in the film already know a whole bunch, you can still amaze the audience with crazy concepts, visual spectacle, and epic music. Also, Mr. Anderson, if you wanted the characters to be filled with wonder, maybe you shouldn't have made the movie take place in a boring brown desert! Or more accurately, the Wildspire Waste, but let's be real, the waste in the game looks so much better than this desert. And there's another part to Paul's reasoning, perhaps more delusional than the first. The idea of monsters in military was from bonus levels in Metal Gear Solid Peacemaker. I thought, well, that's organic to the games because it's already been done. I'm sorry, Paul, but this isn't the MC frickin' U. Just because this crossover occurred in some goofy Metal Gear bonus levels doesn't mean it's organic. These fun crossovers make for great bonus content in video games. Heck, there's even a Witcher 3 quest in Monster Hunter World. But that's all they are. Fun little extras. They are by no means the basis for the first cinematic adaptation of a pre-established franchise. Imagine if Geralt in the Netflix Witcher show started wearing Diablos armor and wielding a heavy bowgun. According to this creative, that would be an entirely organic event that fits the material. Anyway, back to the movie. The Marines scare off the Diablos with explosives, and then they encounter Monster Hunter. No, I'm not joking with this name. The man is literally called The Hunter in the credits. And naturally, the first thing you do when you encounter another human in an insane new world which you know nothing about is fire all your frickin' guns at it! Like I said, people in this movie don't really act like people. Then the Marines get attacked by giant spiders, and Main Girl, who I'll be referring to as Evil Resident, gets stung and wakes up in this dingy spider lair. She then finds dead bodies of her teammates hanging upside down, and then decides to light this incredibly bright flare. Man, I hope no spiders notice that. But then another of her teammates finds her, but it turns out there's giant spider eggs growing on his chest, and they start hatching and the baby spiders crawl all over him? I thought I was watching Monster Hunter, not freaking aliens. Ugh. But she escapes and finds out the spiders hate sunlight. She then proceeds to open a bullet, pour the gunpowder on her wound, and then light the gunpowder on fire as she screams into the distance. Seriously, what the puke is this grimdark Jagras dung? Where's the lighthearted escapism of Monster Hunter World? I get they might need to be a little more serious for the sake of the film, but this is a weirdly dark tone that just doesn't fit with Monster Hunter World. If you want a deeper exploration of the Monster Hunter series tone, this video by Sugar Punch is great, links in the description. So Evil Resident and Monster Hunter make contact, and because the script demands it, they start fighting each other. Evil Resident is tied up, but she escapes and ties up Monster Hunter, but Monster Hunter kicks over the water supply, despite the fact that he too needs the water to survive. So evil resident breaks his family heirlooms, and they start fighting more. This scene is agonizing to watch, man. Neither of them are acting like real people in this dangerous situation with little water, giant spiders, and a gosh darn Diablos. They're acting like two immature kids at the playground. A character is only as smart as the person who writes them. But anyway, evil resident saves Monster Hunter for no apparent reason, and they hatch a plan to kill the Diablos. This part of the film actually isn't terrible. It's certainly not good, it's just above the other bits. Basically, they extract a stinger from one of the spiders and craft it into a weapon to poison the Diablos, which is actually pretty game accurate, using monster parts with unique attributes to craft special weapons. Oh yeah, did I mention Monster Hunter doesn't speak English? Which, I mean, kind of makes sense, but it also makes communication pointlessly difficult. Except when it isn't. This is yet another thing that just didn't need to be in the movie. Because we lack English-speaking characters for most of the film, we never learn why anything is the way it is. The film just hopes we understand because, I don't know, we played the games or something. The battle begins as they use vibrations to summon the Diablos, sort of like the Dune sandworms. The fight itself is a great view into what an average Monster Hunter movie could have been. They weaken the Diablos by shooting a poison dart into its eye, and they kill it by mounting on top its head and driving a massive sword into its skull. Honestly, very game-like. I don't mind that bit. But the part of the fight that I do mind was the stupid frickin' military guns. Evil Resident blasts away at the monster, and once again, the bullets do literally nothing. Not even the rocket launcher does much.
See exotic new life forms.
And this really begs the question. Why add guns to your Monster Hunter movie when the guns do literally nothing to the monsters? They killed this thing with a big-ass sword. Why do guns do nothing? This fight scene is honestly sad because it shows that Paul is a Monster Hunter fan. He knows how the games work and he wanted to recreate that. But he's also a fan with really, really bad ideas. He seriously needed a co-writer who could have encouraged his game-accurate antics while vetoing his blatantly delusional ideas. Paul wanted guns so bad that he hacked in this stupid magic storm thing, but then the guns were nothing more than CGI noise doing actually nothing to the monsters. He actively ruined the story for essentially no reason. Oh yeah, I didn't even explain how this magic storm thing occurred, because the movie doesn't really explain it either, because there aren't English-speaking characters for the majority of the film. Basically, this big dumb obelisk, BDO for short, somehow magically uses magic to somehow magically cause these magical storms that somehow magically teleport things to other dimensions magically. I'm not exaggerating here, this is about as good as an explanation as we get from the film itself. So basically, Evil Resident and Monster Hunter start hiking towards the BDO, so Evil Resident can teleport home with some bullcrap magic, and then we finally get the first good-looking environment in the movie as they enter an oasis. There's so much boring desert in this film, I can't figure out how Paul was planning to excite people with a sense of wonder when most of the environments are literally just sand. Okay, I'll be fair to Paul for a second. This film didn't exactly have a blockbuster budget, so I shouldn't be too harsh on the lack of crazy environments. So yeah, they vibe in the oasis, but oh no! A Rathalos shows up and starts lighting things on fire for no discernible reason. For those who don't know, Rathaloses, whatever the heck the plural is, these scaly flying wyverns are basically dragons. The herds of I wrote this word in my script, but I didn't actually look up how you pronounce it, because Monster Hunter words are hard to pronounce. The herds of Apkaros start stampeding because of the fire, and oh crap! Evil Resident and Monster Hunter are in serious trouble because of this destructive stampede. But it doesn't matter. because all the people from earlier in the movie, remember the ones that got obliterated by the Diablos, show up to save them. In fact, their timing is so impeccable, they literally catch Monster Hunter as he's falling off a cliff. It's honestly pretty nifty when you have plot devices instead of characters. They just kind of do whatever you want, whenever you want. So the plot devices imprison Evil Resident on their ship base for no discernible reason. I don't know, maybe they're just racist or something. Then a really loud bell starts ringing on the ship. Why does the ship have this really loud bell? No idea. They never tell us. And also, wouldn't the Rathalos hear this really loud bell and want to investigate? Or is the really loud bell a deterrent? Sort of like how being noisy on a hike will keep the bears away? Either way, we'll never know. So Evil Resident uses the sound of the bell to mask the sound of her smashing the lock with a bench. Must be a really weak lock and a really loud bell. Then we get what is simply a soulless cameo. But because this film is so wretched, a brainless little cameo is enough to give me a tiny bit of dopamine to hold me out until the end. Said soulless cameo is the Meowscular chef. So it was fun to see him in live action, but I will still criticize it a little, because this Palico is freaky. Sure, the chef isn't exactly the cutest Palico around, but he's not this scary looking. At one point, they even have this utterly worthless insert shot of him preparing some food. They don't even show the hunters eating it. I don't even know when it's supposed to land chronologically in the film. It was just awkwardly inserted for a tiny bit of fan service. But if we wanted to see a CGI animation of Meowscular Chef making meals, we could just play the games. So you may be wondering what consequences Evil Resident faces after escaping this prison cell. The answer is literally nothing. They're just totally chill with her because Monster Hunter vouched for her or something, I don't know. This is another moment that just makes me go, why? If her imprisonment did nothing for the plot, characters, or world building, why include it in the first place? So the hunters go to the BDO to fight the Rathalos, so Evil Resident can get home through the magic portal things. A funny thing pointed out by another reviewer is the fact that the Rathalos is flying around in a thunderstorm, despite water and thunder being two of its weaknesses. And now's as good a time as any to talk about the music. The music in this film just ain't it, man. It's this weird, techno music that doesn't in any way fit the Monster Hunter brand. Monster Hunter has a wide variety of banger tracks they could have just directly ripped or remixed, but they just decided to do their own far worse thing. I seriously don't get why video game adaptations keep doing this. Video games have fantastic music, and yet many adaptations just don't use it. I'll just play this little comparison clip of the movie's techno music versus the game's original music, and I'll let you judge which one fits better. The battle begins. It's pretty much just CGI schlop. The one thing to note is apparently the Rathalos is weak when it's about to breathe fire, so they attempt to exploit that throughout the fight. But for some ridiculous reason, a magic portal magically opens, so Evil Resident magically falls through it, magically arriving back in our world. And the military somehow immediately arrives to help her out. So that's it. She got back home, and the military's extracted her. Movie over. Thank goodness. But oh no! The Rathalos flies through the portal and starts assaulting the military vehicles! The Rathalos rips apart the chopper Evil Resident was on, and it crashes to the ground in a fiery inferno, and Evil Resident is completely fine! Paul was actually being game accurate here, since there's no fall damage in Monster Hunter. I think Paul wanted to recreate that sense of wonder when you just yeet yourself off a cliff and take no damage. Also, when the chopper is attacked, there's this obnoxiously long slow motion shot. Yeah, that's another thing this movie does. Overuse of stupid frickin' slow motion. Slow motion is so annoying, man. Like, it can be used amazingly by good directors, but when geniuses like Paul get their hands on it, they just make their films obnoxiously slow for no reason. Anyway, the Rathalos completely obliterates the military convoy. They try to light him up, but the most the bullets ever do is make him flinch a tiny bit. Which once again raises the question, why did you add guns and military to your Monster Hunter movie if all they amount to is CGI noise? This film is so dumb, man. Evil Resident starts preparing to kill the scaly wyvern, but oh no, a plane crashes and the shockwave yeets her at like 40 miles per hour. But fortunately, because this film is very game accurate, the tremendous impact does basically nothing to her. She then proceeds to grab the monster with her clutch claw and slice open its wing with her little hunting knife. I'm sorry, what? Bullets do literally nothing to the scaly wyvern, but a tiny hunting knife slices open its wing? Huh? I just can't with this film, man. Oh, I just want to go to bed. Okay, So the Rathalos starts its fire-breathing sequence. So Evil Resident shoves her hand into fire to light this flare grenade thing. Like, does Paul have, like, an obsession with his wife getting lit on fire or something? Because this is the second time in this film she burned herself alive. She yeets the flare grenade into the Rathalos' mouth, and it explodes because it's a monster movie, and the monster has to explode from the inside in a monster movie. It's not a total waste, as the CGI looks pretty cool. But oh no! The monster isn't quite dead yet! But oh yay! Monster Hunter shows up to deal the finishing blow! Yay! Movie over. I can rest now. Nope, never mind. Another monster bursts through the sky portal, and we have this hyper cringy sequence as Evil Resident, Monster Hunter, and Admiral charge towards the monster, setting up a sequel, and then the credits finally roll. I don't get how they could fumble this so bad. The premise of Monster Hunter at its most basic level is literally beating up big dinos with big swords. You could have easily made a generic, inoffensive monster movie out of that. And we get flashes of this generic, inoffensive movie as they're fighting the Diablos. But it's quickly overshadowed by the stupid use of modern weapons. The traveling between worlds is so bafflingly stupid, which is why I titled the video that, especially considering how unnecessary it really was. It introduced problems like the monster's seeming immunity to bullets, as well as the language barrier between Evil Resident and Monster Hunter. It just made their interactions so clunky and forced. Traveling between worlds is an extremely big concept that needs to be handled with extreme care in a serious movie. It can easily work in a comedy like the Mario movie, but Monster Hunter is by no means a comedy. Quite frankly, it's far too serious for its own good.
Okay, let me see. Let me see what it is. Go!
And then there's the acting, or rather, lack of it. Tony Jaa does fine with the material he's given, but there's really nothing special about his performance. Apart from his fight scenes, he's a good fighter, I'll give him that. Ron Perlman does basically nothing. Like, he just, reads his lines off a teleprompter. And Mila Jovovich doesn't really act in the traditional sense in this movie. Rather, she has 3 key things that she does continuously throughout. Those 3 things being grunting, groaning, and growling. I will compliment the production design. Apart from the boring desert landscape, it's a pretty good looking film, especially considering the mid-range budget. The monsters look fantastic. The costumes are meticulously game accurate, and the weapons are cool and authentic looking. I also appreciated how they adapted some of the game elements when they are actually trying, like how they extracted the stinger from the spider to make a poison weapon, and how they mounted on the Diablo's head to deal the killing blow, and the use of the clutch claw and the slinger. But all these elements make the film sad in a way. They display that Paul clearly played Monster Hunter and is a fan of it. With those factors, you'd think he's a good person to make a Monster Hunter adaptation. But unfortunately, being a fan of something doesn't mean you have good ideas. This is why fanfiction has such a horrifying reputation. And sadly, that's all this film amounts to, a stupid Monster Hunter fanfiction. It has no effect on the current or future games, it's just noise that'll be forever forgotten to time. I suppose there is one potentially bad meta element, and that being the fact that since this movie failed so terribly, which, I mean, it deserved every dollar it lost, studios will be reluctant to ever fund another Monster Hunter film, which, to be completely honest, is probably a good thing. You've been watching The Fudgebot, and happy hunting.